you want to just flip to the next slide? There we go. So the first thing I need to just say is that this session will be recorded. It will be recorded as well. So if you've got any issues with that, then please let one of us know. So we'll switch the recording on now. Please, will you just introduce yourself in the chat so that we know who's around, and that will aid our connections. Please do ask questions in the chat. We'll be monitoring that as we go. Put questions and comments, and then we'll interlace those at an appropriate time. And if you haven't already done so, please will you get Slido up on your tablet or phone or on another window on your computer. I think the Slido is in there in the chat. If you just click on that and go to 461353, we've just got a few polls that we're going to be using as part of this session. Other just practical things: mute when you're not talking, unmute and turn your camera when you are, and if you want to get attention, please raise your hand. I think that's all the practicalities, so let's get started, and I'll hand over to Karen for this.
Okay, thank you, Carl. First of all, we want to get a bit of a flavour from all of your good selves. If you want to drop it in to use Slido, or you can use the chat box, and we'll try and pick it up between us. What is it that you would like to come out with at the end of this session? So if you start thinking, and you can drop that in to the chat box at any point or on Slido, and we'll try and pick that up for you. But if you've got some of those high level thoughts, what are the key things that you would like to learn from today's session from your colleagues around sharing lessons around projects and what makes them successful? What are the differences now that we're predominantly working in a virtual world? Any of those key areas. So cracking. I do believe a coffee was yours, Carl, from the legacy one from earlier. Yeah, wisdom. I think that's the beauty of any sort of area for opportunities to share and learn from others. Avoidables, absolutely. I think we'll pick up a little bit around what makes projects, programs and any change areas successful. And sometimes it is learning and celebrating those things that haven't gone quite right, and we can learn from each other. Yeah, sharing. Absolutely. And that's another thing. We'll bring in a conversation actually around how do we share lessons much easier than we probably do in our own organisations. How can we? And we've had discussions around just sitting, logging them somewhere on an IT bit of equipment, or in somebody's head, or in some shelving somewhere in an organisation, absolutely gathering dust. But actually, how do we share and spread and adapt the learning? So quite a few things there. Thank you very much. And we'll carry on gathering those. So Carl, are you managing the chat box? Anything you've got to add?
No, nothing in chat yet.
Excellent. Okay. Thank you. Right, okay, we'll move on and we'll keep an eye on these things. So thank you. So to start with, we want to start thinking about those areas of around projects. And if we could move on to the next set of slides, please, the next slide. And I want you to start thinking about, in your own areas, how many projects meet their goals. So if you think about your own organisations, how much in percentage terms from your projects and your experience, how many do you think meet their goals? And if you want to drop it in the chat box, or if you want to raise your hand and share your experience around what's the percentage do you think in your areas of business that projects are successful? And I'll also ask a double question there as well. How do you measure that success? And start thinking about that. And if you've got any lessons that you want to share in the group.
There's a few people that are writing. I can see that the dots going. So I suppose I'll just kick it off then as well. I think it's interesting you asked that question because yes, how do you actually measure success? So is it that, you know, the goal has been met? Who sets those goals? Is it about how easy it was to achieve it? Could something have been done? How many things went wrong? So I think it's all of these things have to be kind of measured, and I think it can be a very subjective kind of number that comes out of it. So Carl's put in the chat a 30% successful rate compared with stated expected benefits. Keith Hilton has put in about 1 in 3. So COVID has destroyed many timelines. Yes, I think that's happening. I think that's a very apt word you've used there as well, Keith. Stephanie Doswell has commented saying at delivering their benefits, she'd estimate about 75%, but the majority are delivered outside of original cost and budget. Yeah, getting a couple more comments come through as well. Sarah Saunders commented around 30%, but also agreed that most often things evolve and change during the project life cycle. So that's very interesting actually, because yes, you start off planning one thing, and then as things evolve, as things progress, you know, things like the pandemic, for example, you do have to then reevaluate what your goals actually are, what the timeline actually is, and then measure your success against that.
Yeah, I think Keith raised the issue around destroying the timelines and milestones. Absolutely, the piece of work that we've been doing in our organisation, we found that certain elements of our overarching change programmes accelerated at pace, and other ones were just absolutely shelved. And it's how do we, and we've spent a lot of time re-engaging, how do we get those up to speed again? And actually, in this current way of working, are those milestones the same as they were when they were set before COVID? And so we've had quite a huge wholesale change. So really, really important point.
Yeah. Stephanie's just commented as well, saying if you judge things on the original business case, then most of them change significantly. So I suppose when you're evaluating success against the original business case, majority of it, you'd have a really low success percentage rate.
Yeah, absolutely. So what I'll do is, I don't know whether we're going to share the slides, but only on key research. And when you start looking at this, and I started asking the question in our organisation, research tells us that around 64% of projects meet their goals. So somewhere around that 2/3 mark, which actually I think we were more or less getting there. And it's a real key element of that. What's that 3% that's actually taking us away from delivery? And we'll come on to some of those things. So a really high percent of projects don't meet their goals. So, you know, that a third of all projects in a programme plan. It's a high percentage of failure. So starting to question, what do you think are the failures? Some of the research tells us that it could be down to methodology, it could be down to the strategy. I think what we've just put into the chat box actually as well is around actually the world's changed somewhat. So what are those things that you think need reviewing if you're not hitting the goals in your organisation? What's from your shared experience? And if you want to put your hand up or drop it into the chat box.
Sue Bramley has just posted something about, you know, your original question. So Sue's comment is saying 60 to 70% successful, so that's pre-COVID, measured by achievement of the KPIs. So often some of the KPIs, some KPIs, but not all are achieved, or there is some improvement, but not at the required performance target level. So I think generally everyone's got the same sort of feeling around the percentages.
Yeah. Okay. Any more comments coming through?
So we have a few that are being typed.
I'm being typed. But it is, I think it's really important to start thinking about, you know, and certainly for those of you who have got that experience pre-COVID and COVID world, what does it feel like now? So projects feel very different. We run them really differently. I don't know about your experience at the moment, but we do an awful lot of exchange that would have been face to face now in a virtual environment. So we're finding some projects actually are speeding up because of that ease of being able to communicate quicker. So again, I don't know what other people's experiences are. And I see the chat box typing away. Okay, I'll go on to the next question and we'll catch up with the comments. So if we start thinking about your areas of your organisations, what percentage do you think of actual organisations report having at least one failed project in a year? So do we report on, and does your organisation report on failed projects?
So Sue has commented, Sue Bramley, projects have often have challenging targets that not everyone believes is achievable or too wide a scope, so that resources are stretched and there may be a lack of focus on the most important priorities. And then Sarah Saunders has responded saying, investing more time in defining the anticipated benefit at the beginning, so skipping, diluting this stage, means often haven't harnessed all of the relevant learning and understanding available in the organisation.
Brilliant. They're really good comments. Does anybody want to expand on why they don't get done as well as they should then at those early stages? Because that's really interesting.
Please feel free to put your hand up and unmute yourself. Sarah, I think it is. Sarah Saunders, yeah.
Hi, yeah, just to build on that point. So I come from a clinical background and work in projects, and I just think there's almost like an inbuilt bias or assumption that we all think we know what we're trying to achieve, just because somebody and sometimes could be a bit of fear in saying, well, I'm not quite sure about this, and we're also anxious to get going. Timelines are always challenging, so you get artificial deadlines set, and I think it just gets overlooked basically. But it's also can be challenging to get all those people together. It's a real commitment of resources, and I think sometimes it's hard with our project speak to sell the benefit of doing that benefits piece as well. So I think for me, sometimes challenges articulating things and setting them out in a way that's meaningful to all the range of stakeholders and people that you need to involve in these pieces of work, that makes it hard for them to then not kind of dismiss it as a project, if you like, because sometimes people can be a little bit dismissive about that language.
Yeah, brilliant points.
Sue Bramley, put your hand up.
Yeah, my background is in manufacturing. I've worked for the NHS for 8 years, and when we ran projects in manufacturing, we had business planning, regular sessions, and a rolling portfolio of programmes. And what I'm still finding strange in the NHS is we seem to start all of our projects on day one of the financial year, and they run and finish at the last day of the financial year, and then we start again. And so our exec boards want scoping and project initiation done for some really large projects, all within a very tight time scale, which means inevitably we just end up having to skip. And the comment was really good from somebody who wrote back that we're not harnessing all the lessons learned and all the available knowledge in the organisation. It's just time pressures.
Yeah, really, really good point. I think that's quite that rolling programme. I think that's what I found very different coming into the NHS sector from other organisations, as you say. I think that's a brilliant observation. So yeah, thank you.
Karen, so Karen Day in the chat has posted something interesting. So Karen says that she hasn't had any projects discussed as having failed. They tend to be like headed as being closed projects. So that cannot always be helpful. And then sometimes transformation programs are complex and seem to be developed as well as delivering at the same time.
Yeah, brilliant. Karen, did you want to expand on that? I think that's a really, really good
Yeah,
point.
yeah, sure. I think for me, if you say it's a failed project, that's not a terminology that that particularly your board or execs or senior management want to hear. So it's how you terminate that, really. For me, I'll call it a closed project. It's just easier than saying failed. But it doesn't stop sharing that lessons learnt bit with people. But I have to say, it doesn't go down well with that terminology.
Yes, the language and connotation failure instead of learning.
Yeah, you know, if you say to some of our non-execs, I'm sure, well, you know, a lot of projects do fail and that's reasonable and acceptable, that doesn't necessarily resonate with them.
Yeah.
And I think for me, a lot of the transformation programs are complex. You're almost delivering as you are trying to write the project plans, and even getting them to define the bits of the program. So, you know, we'll do that bit first, that bit. It's that sort of stuff for me that is sometimes quite challenging. I'm sorry, I should have explained, I'm from a mental health trust, and I head the PMO team in our trust. That sounds very fancy, but there's actually only 2 of us. so it's a very small team.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of large and complex projects that we have to sort of keep an eye on.
Yeah. No,
I'll shut up now because I'll carry on forever.
No, that's absolutely brilliant. I think this is the whole point of this, about sharing, and you know, there's some real important points there about this standardization of language and the interpretation of language. I think that's quite a fascinating area. Any more key comments before I move on to the next sort of question?
Yes, we have a few more. So Karen Day, so again, something transformation programs are complex. Sometimes even transformation programs are complex and seem to be developed as well as delivering at the same time. Victoria Morris, I see you've got your camera on. You've got an interesting insight as well. Do you want to unmute?
So it relates to earlier on, the question earlier on, just took me longer to type out, about the unpicking kind of what happened with the pandemic and what the impact of that was, and how some projects worked really well because of having the lifting things online, really. A lot of our program, which is around bringing HIV prevention to communities that aren't currently being reached, and increasing health opportunities, I suppose, ultimately. All that had to be really, a lot of that, unless people were going to access, there was increased creativity, definitely, around how to reach audiences with digital means, social media, and that's been a benefit. But ultimately, we can't tell whether we're reaching people, and B, many of the people we wanted to reach weren't going to be, they need to be part of conversations. There need to be conversations that are opportunistic and they're in the community. So events and groups and with a sort of community asset approach that our delivery partners use, and they're experts in kind of the right language and having those conversations that kind of encourage people to talk about things that are quite personal. So yeah, I think, you know, well, you know, KPIs have been affected, but we can still make them look good. But in reality, I think we've kind of increased some of the inequalities, or, you know, in a way that we had meant to decrease them because of this this lack of opportunity during this period.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing I was going to try and say with what Karen was saying about something sometimes that go wrong that's hard to put your finger on in terms of the sheer volume of things that you're launching at the same time. I think that's a really good point. And I think we commissioned a number of really interesting stuff, and I think the sheer volume of that sometimes has perhaps meant to the same sort of people has meant actually some of it's been missed, and I don't know, there's something about the volume of stuff really, and maybe too complex actually.
Yeah.
It might have been difficult to anticipate, I don't know, but it's a good bit of learning perhaps.
Yeah. Brilliant observation, thank you. Okay, well, what the research telling us is that companies really do, or organisations really do have failure, but it comes back to this language point, and it's possibly not seen from lessons learned as a huge problem, and up to 70% of companies will report certain failed projects, but it is a problem if it's dependent on, and it's just a bit of what you were just talking about around that link. How important is it? How high a budget? How pivotal is it to many other projects? So that one project failure, if it's small and doesn't have a high level impact, is a good lessons learned. But if it has a high level impact, there's a whole host of different lessons learned, and remedial action needs to be put into place. So it's how we manage it, handle it, and get that recovery. And just following on from that sort of lessons to learn, what sort of percentage of companies do you think measure return on investment? So if you think about your experience in your organisations, is there a really high investment in understanding return on investment in those project areas? Do we put all the efforts into those areas that we need to? So it sort of really builds up on your learning so far. And if you want to share that, you can pop it in the box, or you can pop your hand up. And I suppose the dual question is, do you monitor return on investment of your projects in your areas?
Karen, there's a comment from Donna to say that project managers make every effort to deliver to plan, but the outside world has other ideas. Who certainly does. We are very hard on ourselves using failure, whereas we are in fact being brilliantly adaptive.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's about that learning, absolute learning. Things will change, all the best laid plans and all of that.
So Carl's commented saying, not understood, not measured, return on investment probably thought of as a many thing and not applicable within the NHS setting. Sarah has commented saying, I found return on investment to be quite a technical area of projects that only a few in our organisation, generally in finance, understand and work with. So there's a few themes coming here. So return on investment is normally geared towards sort of financial benefit. And there's a couple more comments coming through. So Sue has commented, our finance department have worked with us in the past and measured return on investment when we were focused on CIP. What does that mean?
Yeah. Cost improvement plans. Cost improvement plans.
Okay.
So all the efficiency and finance link savings. Yeah.
That's a new thing for me, but this is no longer done as the focus has moved more towards quality improvement. I think, yeah, I would agree with that, especially being in an NHS setting. Karen's commented saying, I don't think we put enough focus on return on investment, but do feel our focus on quality outcomes for patients is the key focus. I do not believe that they are mutually exclusive to each other.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is the real key around that quality impact. So it's what is the return of investment and what's the high priority with the piece of work that you're setting out right at the very beginning. And Carl, you made some comments around how difficult it is. And we've all touched on that. Is there anything from your experience that you want to share around how you go about return on investments? Is it linked to your benefits realisation? How do you link that out, and what impact assessments maybe you use?
Just in terms of our practice here, I really don't think that we have that in our mindset. I mean, I come from a variety of background, non-health background, where return on investment was a key measure. I also come from a social enterprise background where it was very important to know what the social return on investment was, not just the financial return on investment. So for me, it's just ingrained mindsets, but I think it's not something that I've experienced here as and it bothers me because actually we put a lot of time and effort into projects, and time and effort is precious in the NHS, and I'm really keen that we find a way of being a bit smarter about what we put our time and effort into, so we get a real return on that time and effort investment. So that's an agenda that I've got on my plate for my organisation going forward, but it's not something I've observed yet to date. I'm just conscious of the time. We're coming up to 1 o'clock. Karen, how do you want to just run through, because you have got some slides which just put some numbers. I don't know, would it be worth just running through those as a little bit of a summary, and see what other comments have we got left before we wrap up?
Absolutely. So if those slides, I don't know whether somebody could put those slides up. So these figures are all on the slides, and quite happy for you to have these to share. So on return on investment, 60% of companies.
Just hang on, Karen. Just hold for. Are we going to get the slides up there, or
Para should
Para?
be able to put them up?
Yeah.
Just give Para a moment.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely fine. So we can run through those slides really quickly, and it'll just give you a little bit of an indication. So it's just about prompting your thoughts around these. So we can skip through these really quickly, and then we can finish off when those come in.
Sure. The other thing is we did have a couple of little Slido questions. Interested to hear what everybody's characteristics of a project from hell would look like. What are the characteristics of your dream project? So if we have time for a bit of fun, we'll produce a word cloud of the characteristics of a dream project and a project from hell. But,
so I think we can jump straight to that, Carl, because the last statistic on the slides that I was just running through was the return on investment, and businesses report that actually it's not all about money. We'll look at the value, as we've touched on, the quality, and actually those more successful organisations really rate the lessons learned and that promotion of sharing. So that's something to consider. We can go, if we can go on to when we've got the magic of the slides back up, as Carl said, we can go on to what are those characteristics that make a dream project. And if we can't get the slides up, we can just drop it into the chat box. So what makes a dream project work? If you were to sum it up in 1 or 2 words.
Karen, I have got the slides. If you want me to share them, the project statistics.
Yeah,
we've got the Slido running, so people can actually take the poll.
Okay, so if you jump to, we're going on to what are the characteristics of your dream project. So we've run through all the statistics, so we're okay.
I think sorry, Karen, I think the ones that's showing on the slide at the moment is the project from hell. So we're doing the project from hell, I think looks like the first one. And then we'll have the dream project. It's the other way around.
Oh, okay. No, that's absolutely fine. I can't see the slide, so there's something amiss with my thing. So apologies. So if we're on that one, if you pop down what doesn't make a project work, then what's your characteristics make that not work? So I can't see the slides either. Can everybody else see the slides?
Nobody can see the slides. This Slido is working. So if you've got Slido on your thing, you can put that there, and it is forming a cloud on that.
Fabulous. Okay. So your characteristics of a project from hell, what would they be?
We've got some comments in the Slido poll already.
Well, what I suggest we do is seeing as we're having trouble with the technology sharing on the screen for everybody, if we can just give it a moment for anybody to put their responses for what they characteristics for a project from hell on the Slido, and then we'll move on to the project characteristics of the dream project. Just a couple of minutes on that.
Okay, I'm going to run that poll now. I'm ending the one on projects from hell and running the one on your dream project.
Okay, go for it. Okay, so we're now on to dream projects. So, characters of dream project.
Right, can you see those results on Slido?
Yeah, they're starting to come through on Slido. So with gorgeous progress reports, harmony, trusted to get on with it, good buy-in, clear mandate, a team to deliver, clear objectives and scope. So that's coming through. That theme of having clear purpose, clear mandate, clear objectives seems to be coming through quite strongly. Para, if you can get the slides up, I think Karen's sort of research on when projects go wrong is probably quite a good way of rounding that off.
Okay.
So
you should have it on the screen now.
Yeah,
yeah. So if you can just
20.
move on, progress, go on from there.
Lovely, and we can pick it up from there. So I'll skip through these before we can hand over and look at the network. So this is just really useful. Thank you very much, Para, for that. And there'll be absolute, if you ask those questions, you're going to get exactly the same opposite answers, if that makes sense, because we're absolutely clear that really good organisational approaches to project management really look at really clear goals. And so the converse of that, those from hell, they haven't got set goals, they really don't, they keep changing the priorities, having that dedication, being able to adequately forecast, get the buy-in, and we've got some comments I can see, absolutely making sure that you can keep on top of the scope creep. But these statistics give you a little bit of some fallback on actually what's the percentage, and also some organisations use a rating system and actually manage these as an impact assessment before they even start the project. So I don't know whether anybody does anything like this with a set defined key lines of enquiry, just so as you can get to the end of projects and start rating and saying actually overall our projects sit in, and actually we don't put enough effort into setting clear goals right at the very beginning. So that's just something that may or may not be useful for you. So any questions on those sorts of statistics, or any ideas or thoughts from anybody before we go on?
Karen Day has also said Project from Hell is having poor relationships.
Yeah.
Unclear objectives that are not smart, scope creep, a team that are not bought into making a change, and then conversely, a dream project, we make a difference in a good way, and then really supportive SROs who help to make things happen.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, thank you. If we can go down to what lessons. So if we go down to from slide 21, excellent. So we've started to share some key lessons, and I'm hoping this research is not definitive. Start thinking about, is there something useful in these questions to ask you and your environments to work with? So if we go on to the next slide, please. So we've got the what key lessons do you want to share? And you can share this in Slido. About who holds a review, so who reviews regularly their projects, so post-implementation review and sharing the lessons and really promoting it. And if you want to do that, if we've got it in Slido or in the chat box, so who has a really rigorous approach to holding end of project reviews and sharing lessons? Sorry, question.
Para, can you just move us on, please, on the slides?
Yeah, and if it's too much to type, just honestly put your hands up.
Victoria, did you want to say something? You've got your camera on.
I was going to say no.
Okay.
Just working on that now. That's why I'm here.
Is that a no, you don't do the end of project reviews, post-implementation
I'm
reviews?
this is the first time I've reached the end of a project, I think, a series of projects. So I've got an evaluation partner, so we're working together on what it will look like.
Yeah.
The idea is there, but I think it's quite interesting because for me, because it's a program with different elements, and the stakeholders are sometimes the ones are particularly interested to review it with. So we've got to think about how to do that, but the focus will be probably on the content of what we've done, whereas I think there's some interesting stuff to do about how it was done altogether.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah, and different organisations do it to lesser or more degrees, really. So it is about that evaluation. I've been in organisations where we've actually worked with individuals in a project and said more or less, how's it felt for you, and what development opportunities, if you were to run it again, what personal development have you gained, what do we need to be learning, what skill sets and what support mechanisms do we need to put in place for other people, because it's sometimes we're so busy chasing the goals, it's like how have we brought people along on that journey in that project as well. So lots of different learning opportunities. Thank you. Any comments? I can see comments popping up.
Yeah, we've got a few. So Keith has commented saying 18 months in the NHS and never heard of a project review being done. Previous organisations, we did them with benefit realisation follow-ups. Sue has said we started end of project reviews a couple of years ago, and they haven't been done during COVID. And many of us are seconded to assist with the COVID response right now. So it looks as though, yes, they were doing it before, like pre-COVID, but during, and obviously we're still during it, and that's just not been possible. And Karen Day, yes, we do, and it's shared through our senior leadership teams.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Karen, did you want to share how well that works? Sorry, that sounds really interesting. Thank you.
Yeah, what we do, we have a PMO group that's various people that come into that, so from various parts of the trust, finance, HR, some of the associate directors and others. That group reports through to our senior leadership team. So as part of our reporting, we're reporting about all the projects, and we also always include any closure reports and reviews that we've held that then gets fed to that senior leadership team. They're able to see it, comment on it, and actually pick up some of the things that didn't work well as well, and figure some of those things out. So it prompts a conversation with that senior team, really.
No, it's really, really helpful. Thank you, Karen. Okay, we'll go on to the very last section because we're keen. We want to stick to time. So if we look at the networking opportunities, and I'll do a bit of a dual act if it's okay with Carl here. So if you go on to the next slide, there's all sorts of networking opportunities, and for those that you are linking in with the NHS Futures work, we've got regional PMO network leads. So we'd really promote you getting in touch with your regional leads if you're not already, as key contact points, and to start registering your interest to get more access to individuals and sharing lessons learned and getting involved in the community network as much as you possibly can. Carl, do you want to add anything?
No, just get in touch.
Excellent, thank you. Yeah, absolutely, the more the merrier. So fantastic. Next slide, please. And then just some further information. This is where you can get some more update news, community updates, information. You can register. So linking in with your community of networks through NHS Futures, you can access all the newsletters, get more contacts. It's widening your opportunities to get involved in all of the different networks and communities of people working on projects, people who have got a very sympathetic ear and listening and sharing the lessons learned. So please please take advantage of all of those networks. Some fabulous opportunities to link in with lots of different levels of expertise. Ask your questions and share your learning. So thank you. And then lastly, let's catch up. So where are we with the next news events? Who do I need to hand over? So do I hand over to you, Carl, or the team?
That's fine. Yeah, no, I'll wrap up if you want. So if you move on to the next slide, just to reiterate something that Joe's already advertised. So our next 2 dates for Compass 2 and Compass 3, please mark them down in your diaries now. And more details will follow. I'm just looking at the next slide. What's 2029? Because that, can you just go to 29?
The slide
no,
on
don't
next
slide that
events
too
is on
soon.
the
No,
screen.
come back off that. You can't. Yeah. Right. So this session's all been about lessons. We often use the phrase lessons learned, which I think is a misnomer. They're lessons opportunities. One of the things we want to learn from is your feedback from the session. So please make sure that you do give us feedback on the sessions. It's really important to us. So now we can reveal your prize code. So you can go to 29 for those of you that are highly competitive and following this. If you can get Para, if you can go to 29.
The slide is up.
There it's come they up. So anybody wants to do that, and if there's nothing else, anybody wants to put a final word for this session, stick your hand up or just speak up. No. Other than that, then I can say thank you. We've come to time. Please do give us your feedback and enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
Thank you.